So I made a Etherpad, a shared, it's like a shared document like Google Docs. You can put stuff into it, and that would be a useful thing to. I figure if we have, this is a type of thing where a lot of people have links to other tools, and this would enable us to just drop links in there, and I can put them up on the screen and share them. And any links you see in these slides, well, obviously, I'm going to post the slides. They'll be on the Drupal campsite, and then I'll also post the links in that document. So don't feel obligated to try to rush to write down some URL before I go past the slide or something like that. And just to introduce me, my name is Robert Ristroph. I'm a technical architect at Acquia. So I work in the PS department, and a lot of what I do is sort of seed Drupal projects. Often we're one of our partner companies, maybe one of you guys is actually doing the work, kind of off to a good start, and make sure that they're integrated with our hosting, with all the best practices and all that kind of stuff. So I end up looking into a lot of these sort of best practices development type things. And the reason why this is an introduction is because I'm kind of just getting started on this myself. I have not actually run a project where we regularly ran Coda or any kind of other code quality metric thing. And I want to start doing that with all my projects, which means that it has to be painless to set up, because I can't afford to spend a lot of bureaucracy setting something up for every project. It's not going to be reasonable. So anyway, this is kind of like where my current state of exploration is. And there's my email address there. I guess it's my personal one, not my Acquia one, but that's okay. And my Twitter. And obviously you can have the benefit and disadvantage of having a easily Googleable name. So these things like the code sniffer and so on, in the academic world, they go under the name static analysis, which is a little bit hard to Google on. But if you go back in sort of academic computer science, like 10 years or 20 years or more, it's been sort of an academic topic at like PhD level computer science for a while. But it always had this reputation of being sort of an ivory tower thing that wasn't very useful in the real world, and it was probably justifiable. A lot of the stuff was like trying to run neural networks on your code to find bugs and stuff, and it really wasn't going anywhere. But it seems like about 5 years ago or so, some really useful stuff came out, and the static analysis tools got a lot better. And one of the links I have in the Etherpad thing there is John Carmack, who's the guy who wrote Quake, and is sort of like among hardcore coders, if you want to call them that. He's like definitely a fanboy figure and everything. In his 2011 QuakeCon keynote, instead of talking about Quake, he talked about static analysis tools and how they were now useful. And in particular, he talked about how the Microsoft Visual Studio now had some really great stuff in it. And went on about that, which of course, singed the hairs of all of us Linux guys like me. But that kind of pushed out the fact that there were now a lot of actual useful code analysis tools. The PHP world was kind of lagging behind the sort of desktop C and C++ world a little bit there, but it caught up. And so I list the 3 common tools there. PHP CS is the one that I have set up and working that we can mess around with. All of them came out of, I think all of them except for one were written by Germans, and particularly people from environments where code quality was more important, at whatever companies they were doing. And kind of, I guess, about 2 or 3 years ago, people in the PHP world began to realize these things were good and produced good output. And I guess I left a link off of here that I meant to put on there. So in DrupalCon Portland, and you can find this presentation, the guy who did PHP the PHP LOC tool, did a talk, and he showed this tool run and its metrics in terms of flagging problem code and everything on like different checkouts of the Drupal code base going back for several years, and different checkouts of the WordPress data code base going back several years, and several other frameworks as well. I think that was sort of an eye-opening thing for a lot of the coders in the Drupal community, and people, started paying attention and believing these things. If you are a programmer, I'm sure you're aware that trying to measure someone's productivity in terms of how many lines of code they produce is completely useless. And the PHP LOC tool, I think, was sometimes ignored just because its name was LOC for lines of code. But it actually checks a lot of other more substantial things. Let's see. So the best place to figure out how to install them is this particular Drupal.org node. I think that's in the Etherpad. But it's also not very good. It gives you a couple of different options, and the easiest way to do it via Composer is not implemented in there. The second tool that I actually install is the Coda module, and you can install that not in your Drupal code base, like not in your doc root, but inside the inside your .drush directory, like in. So if you go inside your .drush directory and do drush dl coder, and you should install it that way and not in your code base. That's the main point I had there. And let's see. Okay, so from here I was going to go and jump into the demo and messing around at the prompt, but I think that will be kind of open-ended, and we'll be able to do that for a long time. So I'm going to shoot through the slides I was going to show after that really quickly. And so I think the way these tools are best used, I kind of listed these in order of what's easiest to do, and using it as a quick self-check. Like you just did something and you're about to post a patch on D.O, and you run this command line and say, and like reformat a couple of commands. That's the easiest and quickest way to do it, and you should definitely start doing that. And using Coda is the best way to do that. Another way to do it, another useful thing for this is you're adding a module to a project. And there's always that feeling of trepidation, like it's an ongoing live site and you're adding a module to it, and like, is this gonna get me in trouble and cost me all weekend fixing something? And running it over unfamiliar code is a good way to focus on what to read and kind of get an idea of the general goodness of something. And then the next three things are stuff that I haven't kind of really figured out. I'd like to run it on every commit of the projects I work on, and kind of be able to see a pull request and see something that says like, hey, this pull request increased the number of quota warnings by 20% or something like that. And I put a groups.drupal.org link in there where there's a nice ongoing discussion about how to do that. And this will be kind of a punchline for the end, but I don't think, these tools are not intended to replace actual thinking. They're supposed to make you be more efficient at thinking. So if you're thinking you can quit trying hard at programming because you have this tool, I think you're in for disappointment. So I'm going to run this demo. One thing I want to emphasize about this demo is I felt some trepidation about like taking some other person's code and running some analysis on it and saying, oh, this was bad and this was good and so on. So I'd actually wanted to run this on my own custom code, and I couldn't really find a good example that didn't like have the client's name in the module name or something like that, and so I didn't come up with anything. But the point of this demo is not to criticize any of the people who gave me code for free that I am making money off of and so on. So, and in fact, there's not going to be like any really big problems we run across of. We're more looking at the tool itself. So just to keep that in mind. And that's sort of my, those are sort of my summary slides. And let's go back to our demo and do it. So this is the page where I did the installation from, just to cover some things. Let me find my prompt. So let's see how big that text is. Maybe I can make it a little bit bigger. Huge. Well, it might be too huge, but we'll see. It's going to be a little bit clunky, but we'll see what we can do. So I have a Drupal site here that's just straight Drupal 7, and I threw in a couple of modules that I'm going to run this on as a sample. And I'm going to kind of run it on the 2 where it produces a few warnings, and then run it on 1 where it produces more. Let me kind of back up. So the GA login module is a module that allows you to use the Google two-factor authentication to log into a site, so that you log in and then you get a text message and you have to input that to finish logging in. And I was looking at adding that to a site, and you know, I wanted to, because it's a login module, obviously I'm a little, you want to scan through that from a security point of view and so on. But the first thing I did is I ran this Drupal CS command, and actually let's just do a drush help on that first. And that obviously stands for Drupal code sniffer. And it's not very useful. That's right, this is the one that doesn't have very many options anyway. So let's run this example usage just to see something before I go back to it. And it's not finding any problems, obviously. Let's see if there are any other files that I should look at. And I think this one all came out very clean. And so this Drupal CS drush command, so there's 2 different ways you can run the code sniffer tool. There's this Drupal CS command, but the Drupal Coder module also integrates with it. So let's look at, let me go back through my history here a bit. So here's the drush coder command. Let's run that on the GA login module and see. And there's a little bit of, so some of these commands you run on a file, and other ones you can give a module directory. And so my history here is a little bit confusing. Well, here at least we got some output. So I switched from those, which actually didn't produce very much output, to the simple SAML PHP module, which did. I have to make the text smaller just so we can see more stuff. Okay. So here, shift page. So here we can actually see some better, more actual output. And so it's giving line numbers here, and it's giving warnings. And the fact that it gives a lot of warnings, and they're all, just variable formatting, so it's the name, camel case. That is, it means that that it maybe wasn't coded by somebody who's used to writing Drupal modules, but it could be worse type thing. And then the other files list no problems found. And then I want to show the output of the other command. So here's Drupal CS, which is showing a slightly different format, but the same things, and it has caught more errors. And so if we look through here, you can see the kinds of things that it pulls it back. So things like the formatting of the standard Drupal block, the space tags, line size, camel case type things. And then you get into other things that are maybe more important, like lines indented incorrectly, spacing around operators, and things like that. And so, none of these might jump out at you as a bug, but the fact that there are a lot of them indicates that maybe this module hasn't gone through enough Drupal coders, that somebody who sort of doesn't have a lot of experience with Drupal submitted it, and then it hasn't had the benefit of a lot of patches coming from other Drupal people fixing it up yet, and so on. And so actually one of the reasons why I picked this is the current stable version of this, well, this is the current dev version of this module. All the problems that we can look at in here already have issues, and like there are things that fix up a lot of these issues filed on Drupal.org. It's that particular module just happens to be lagging a little bit in applying some of the things. Maybe they're ready to be committed and not filed yet, and so on. And so one of the things I wanted to do to kind of emphasize the limitations of code sniffing is if we look in this actual code, so we just looked at its output for the simple SAML PHP auth module, and let's see, I happen to know that on line 366 there's this.
Can you highlight it so we can see it, because the blue on black is not showing?
Yeah, I should have tested this. Should have tested this background beforehand on the projector.
Just that line that matters.
Yes.
Just its comments. Don't worry about it. Yeah. The rest
Oh,
the comments of the dark blue.
Yeah, they're. That's one of the horrible things about this color scheme. Yeah, so it's the line where I have the cursor here. I'm flashing back and forth. And so probably I can see that some people here are like recognizing that as a bug, but there's only one equal sign there and not two. So instead of doing an if on whether or not something is equal, it's setting category to account and then always continuing, so this block always runs no matter what. And if you analyze this, and so this is also something that there's a patch for, and it actually doesn't have any bad effect or anything if you trace through the code. So it doesn't, as far as I can see, let you break into the site or anything like that. But it is a bug. I think its effect is that if you have the simple SAML PHP auth module on, you cannot, you get a certain error if you also create non-SSO accounts, like ordinary Drupal accounts. And so this is on line 366, and if we go back to our checker here and scroll up, you see it did not actually catch that. And And I know that other static analysis tools, like the ones that are pretty standard and C and so on, would have caught it. I think there are other ones that will catch it with PHP as well, and it may well have simply not caught it because the part of that install script, part of those install instructions was setting up some particular rules that the Code Sniffer should use for Drupal, and perhaps they need to be updated, and then they would catch this. It would surprise me if places like Facebook and so on were not using a tool that would have caught that. So I think it exists. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure mess detector will tell you about it, but it might not be the default.
Okay, that's a good point because I haven't run mess detector and PHP LOC and the whole suite over this. I have only got into Code Sniffer, and so I think something would catch it, but this gets back to my point in the slide that these automated tools are not going to replace thinking and all those types of things. What they can help you is in focusing in on maybe particular modules that haven't been reviewed very much and things like that. So they can help you be more efficient, but they can help you think more efficiently. They can't think for you. And so one final option that I would like to, so the Coda module has this -- security option, which causes it to check explicitly for some of the common patterns with cross-site scripting and SQL injection and so on. So making simple mistakes like not passing certain strings through check plain and so on will be caught or warned in many cases. And in this case, nothing is found. And in my experience, the things that it catches best are the output type cross-site scripting things. So running it on the things like the login module and so on, those don't display very much text, and they're less likely. They don't have problems of that sort typically.
It's also good to do the internationalization check as well.
Let's just do the help thing on that and look through those options. Let's see if I can pipe this through less, make it more manageable. So these are the options that you can pass to the Coda review. This is not the Drupal CS one. And so you were referring specifically to the I18N one? And what does that check for?
That basically checks if you've wrapped all your strings in a translate, and will also point out bad coding practices where you've wrapped them in a translate, but they're not supposed to be.
Okay.
Person who has a couple of international sites. I've submitted a bunch of patches because of that.
Do you run this over new modules that you add to your site as a way of vetting them?
I haven't actually done much with the brush, but I usually checkbox that with the module version, the GUI version.
Okay. So this actually gave some warnings on this module. So this is a cool example. So let's take a look at them. And so it has an argument to L, should be enclosed within T. And let's see, are all of these are all the same thing, and they all go from 596. Let's look at the first two because they're close together and take a look at them. One thing I should mention, if you integrate this with an IDE like PHP Storm or Emacs or anything, there's this line number here with the plus that's in the right format, so that if you put it on the command line to Vim, you'll open the file and it'll go right to that line, which I'm not going to try to do live, but we'll take a look. 596 and 603. And so here we see something where it's a form alter, so, and it's calculating this this link variable, which is confusing because there's also a links variable, and
Basically, it's a federated login, should be wrapped in a T.
yeah, and so link then ends up being part of this links variable, which is then thrown directly into the pound markup of the form. So that's, you know, anything that's thrown directly into like the pound markup of a form thing should kind of be checked very carefully. So I would say that it found a valid problem there, which is interesting. I know some internationalized sites which use this module. Let's look at those other line numbers while we're at it. And here, it's at least kind of pulling it out of somewhere else. So maybe something else checked it. We can't really tell. I think 803, was that another one? Let's just search for.
It also complains if you're, I think it does a little bit of checking to see whether or not you're concatenating variables inside a T. So does
Yes.
the argument to T should be a translatable string, not
Yes,
a variable string?
that's right.
Yeah. So I think that T included a link. It looked like it was concatenated with a link.
And so here it looks like there's similar things. Yes.
You should mention also the PHP because Sniffer can fix some of those errors. I don't know if you mentioned that. You can tell it to fix like coding standards.
Yes.
Like missing spaces or like extra spaces. It can fix all of those for you.
Yeah, so I think that's a good thing to mention. I generally haven't used it that way, but if the fixes are those simple trivial rules like having 2 stars in the first part of a comment block, for instance, you can have it fix them automatically. And I guess in that same vein, we should probably also mention the Coda update module, because it is kind of that on a more massive scale, attempts to do a lot of automatic updating between APIs of versions. So the idea there is you can take a Drupal 7 module, run this Coda update thing, and it will give you the Drupal 8 module, and where everything was sort of a one-line to one-line translation, it will have done it for you, and then other things maybe it will have flagged with a comment, so like you need to rewrite this part. And
that works. That's pretty amazing.
I have seen examples of modules where it worked out of the bat.
That's pretty cool.
But I wouldn't just run it and blindly throw it in a production site. Maybe I'd throw it in my dev to see if it gave any errors. But it's pretty sophisticated. I know that this is getting off topic a little bit, but I know that we have Drupal 8 coming down the road. A lot of people have trepidation about all the sites and modules they're going to have to upgrade and so on. And if you look online for some of the Drupal 8 module talks where they talk about Coda update, I think it will kind of alleviate some of the concerns there.
It's actually a dedicated module called Drupal Module Upgrader for Drupal 8. It's not part of Coda.
Oh, so
It's a separate.
was it rewritten or split
Yes,
off? Or?
The one that WebCheck built.
Okay.
She's got an intern working on it now.
Okay. Cool. Yes.
I've got a module ready for you whenever you want to do a security check.
Yeah.
It's in the pack.
Okay. Let's.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Let's take a look at that. Unless somebody else has another question. I mean, my plan is to keep fiddling around up here. Yes.
You know what AirView uses when it's evaluating projects? It seems to be different from. I've thrown every PHP code sniffer and Coda review I can at it, and it just doesn't find the AirView still picks up things that I won't find in my local until
could be a version difference. Maybe but it's the same. It's supposed to be the same.
Is it? Okay.
Well,
It's all Drupal.
these tools all have the way to insert custom rules too, and give the rules different rates. Different weights and importance. So you can, potentially configure very custom things out of it.
There's also a level of warnings. Like you can ask to do a minor one. Maybe Kirby has it set up to
You do, yeah.
You want to show
project
Kirby maybe?
review. You go to submit a project.
Rob,
Uh-huh.
you want to show Kirby quickly?
Yeah. How should I show it?
Just show the page. You don't have to try it. How do
What,
you spell that?
what is the page?
He's going P-A-R-E, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, so you can
I pronounce this as PA review. So I wasn't thinking.
That would make a lot more sense. Project application review.
Should we drop the Git URL to?
I got one for you.
Yeah.
Actually, it's in Sandbox, so I don't know how to get you the link. So
Can you drop it into this? Let me put it up so you can see the URL. Is this it? That's the Jenkins one.
you can just go to the Sandbox for classic panel stuff if you want. You can run it. Clean it up.
Where did I hide that? There we go. Okay. You're thinking of running our tool on this one, the R4.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you look at this URL up here, I don't know how obvious that is. If you can read it from back, if I increase the size of the screen, it doesn't increase the size of the URL bar. It's pad.lullabot.com/p, then Asheville 2014-code sniffer. I'll put that back up in a second. We can trade links that way. All right, so we have the R403.2 login. And of a particular version. And so was it coder-security, which I should run on this?
Yes, I haven't tried, but it should work.
Okay, and just as a background, what this does is, if you get a 403 page, it redirects you to the login page. You can add it to a site where you presume that if somebody's getting a 403 page, it's because they're not logged in and they should be. So, and it says code review file not found, which I haven't figured out why that happens, but I know I can run it on the individual files, I think. So maybe I could even pass it star. Still says. Does the module have to be active on the site for it to run? Let me try one of the other ones. No, I was having this trying to review the Jenkins module as well. For some reason, it wouldn't. Let me try it with no security. Yeah, maybe I can cd into the folder and run it there. let's see. I'm not sure if I should run dot or give it the module name still. Let me look at the help for Coder. And so running dot made it produce a lot of stuff. And I can see by the stuff flying by that it is producing some warnings. So let's see if we can. It's actually running over the entire Drupal setup. Well, it finished anyway, which wasn't what I intended, but let's see if we can do something more useful. No, it's still saying the review file.
Path from the Drupal root.
Yeah, CD back to the Drupal site, to the Drupal. That's
If
right.
you did for dot seems to was the root.
Yes. So now try the, yeah.
And should I
Folder.
just engines and just give it the sites?
No, just, let's try just the
Module name.
module name.
Okay. Well, the best way for me to do that is tap complete and delete. Still gave the same thing. I'll try giving it the whole directory too. And so that did something. And said 0 warnings were flagged, but I didn't give it the dash security one. So let's give it dash security. So all these little details are obviously things that, and it gave 2 projects, 2 files warned. Just to make sure that's doing anything, let me try that, see if I can get it to output any warning at all. So it looks like it didn't. So anyway, all these kinds of details, like what directory to run it from and how to specify a module or stuff, are things I'm going to have to figure out if I want to run this automatically off new stuff, because otherwise I run the risk off somebody put something in a multi-site directory, they didn't find the right thing and never got reviewed or flagged by, you know, this tool or something like that. Why don't let me see if it will now do the GA login module correctly. And it did. It found no warnings. That's good, because I was having problems running that this way before. And so I think there's something also out of sync with the coder, the way the coder is invoking PHP, the way coder is invoking PHP CS, and the way Drupal CS is this strush command. Because I think this one listed, so I just ran this off of the Jenkins module, which is so Jenkins has an API and there's a Drupal module that can reach out to it, and so you can list what status of jobs is in your Jenkins jobs inside your Drupal site, which is kind of cool. I had problems running on that earlier, but with this going to the root and listing the full full path name seems to work better. And I think this is also, and so these are more useful things. So like if we look through them, if I was analyzing a module and saying, hey, am I going to get a text message in the middle of the night and the site is down if I put this in? And I'm trying to get like that feel for how closely should I review something. These types of warnings tend not to worry me very much. Because I think a lot of modules that are well regarded and so on have these various things in there. Like there's something that contains too many characters. There's a missing comment for a param block, and then another one that doesn't have the return statement. You know, that's not as worrisome, and there's only a few, right? I think.
Matters we would never have views or CCK.
Yes, and they're.
Berlin and Chaos notorious for not following the Drupal standards.
Yeah. So I think that also emphasizes that these tools are useful to help you analyze and get and focus on where to unfocus quickly, but you can't use them as sort of some automatic gate for code being good or bad.
So on the flip side, if you are adding patches, there are a lot of people, the first thing they will do is run your patch through Code Sniffer and reject it out of hand without even looking in to see how good it was.
That's true, and I'm actually.
It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm not so much against that usage, because I think one useful thing for Code Sniffer is if you have it set up to run automatically, so you have like a baseline, and you know that this module has always produced 112 errors, and somebody gives a patch, and now there's 108, then that's a step in the right direction, right? And sort of those sort of overall things like, and so like if I was looking over the result of the last sprint on some big project with several different developers, and I saw that overall the number of PHP warnings continued to go down, then I would have a good feeling, like I'm probably not going to end up having to come into work on Saturday morning. Whereas if they had jumped by a lot, but then I would look further. I'd say, did we just add a bunch of contrib modules, or is there a new guy on the team, but everyone was so impressed with him when they interviewed him, like no one reviews his code because they think he's a genius, or what's going on here? And that might not result in me taking any particular action. Like I may just feel better about things, or feel more worried about things, and decide like this sprint coming up, we need to focus on some code cleanup issues. And I think that's going to be the most useful tool for these things. I think the way that these tools would help the Drupal community if we were all using them is that problems that would burn us because they had managed to get into Drupal.org and then eventually end up on several of the different projects we work on would tend to get caught much earlier before they even ended up as a patch on Drupal.org. Like, because ultimately, all of our teams do a lot of patches that end up in our other teams' projects. If you think about the way code flows, and I think I don't know. I think pushing this kind of code quality stuff kind of across our community is going to pay off for all of us in the long run.
Yeah, I can only agree with you. Having a base convention for everyone to use is very helpful. Like I remember having to jump on a customer that had a security attack, and I had to review that code to try to find out what happened on their site. And they were not exactly using the standards. And so it was harder to review that code. But if they were using the same standards, it would be much quicker for someone to really could understand what's going on and find out in this particular case why they were attacked.
Yes. So I think.
I was just going to make another kind of similar comment that the other thing that's happening too is PHP itself is getting much more strict and much better at finding bugs. I mean, just look at your watchdog log for PHP errors if you're running it on PHP 5.5, and how many of those bugs have been fixed in the contrib modules and things like that. And down the pike is also strict typecasting and stuff, so that you don't, you get more into the Java world where you say, if I'm going to get a string, if I pass an array and it's expecting a string, you're not going to get odd answers.
Right.
And vice versa.
I think both of these things are very good observations. If you have code that follows the standards, you can get other people to review it well, and that's why people who maintain modules in their, not directly billable time and receive a lot of patches. That's why they tend to reject out of hand patches that don't pass the code review, because they're taking time out of their TV watching session in the evening, looking over what came in on the Drupal.org queue, and if they automatically know they're going to have to like think for 10 minutes just to figure out what you were trying to do, then they're much more likely to say, no, format it right, and let me try again. And then I think the point on the evolution of the PHP community as a whole is also a really good one. Like, PHP kind of started out, I think, with a lot of sort of content managers and designers and people who learned Dreamweaver needing to do a little bit of functionality inside a web page, and it's been evolving for pushing 20 years now. I'm not sure exactly when the first PHP came out, and now a lot of those same people have been coding for so long. They're more advanced than people who came from a very formal CS education often, and they're kind of beginning to apply that same culture.
Which is also another advantage of D8 becoming more object-oriented, because the PHP object-oriented is much more strict.
Yes. I think that as we get into D8, and a lot of us are like looking at sort of unfamiliar code structures, using tools like this will help us get up to speed faster. Kind of at the end of time, I'm going to flash through my last summary slides really quick, and then we'll wind it up. But if you want to talk about this stuff, I'll be around the whole camp, and I'm interested in collaborating with anybody, particularly if you're trying to figure out how to run these tests automatically in such a way that they don't like basically spam your inboxes and warnings and make you ignore the whole output. So this, I think we just kind of covered. I think where to go from here, if there was like an example Jenkins job you could drop in that ran these and accumulated them over time, that would be good, because doing a lot of work to get something working is, often just causes it to not happen. This, I think we were talking about how this is, I think, going to increase our code quality a notch. And this is a shout out to all the people who ran this camp. One thing I will mention is on that groups.google link I gave to like the discussion on automatically running these, there's a nice little subthread in there where some people are talking about the noise of noisy modules that just have a lot of warnings that don't actually mean anything, and what you actually need to pay attention to is whether the warnings increase or change or something, and how to deal with that. And if you avoid creating lots of warnings in the first place, that's great. But we're all working off a huge contrib code base, which we're very grateful for because it makes us money, and that's what we have to work for. So I think that's it.